We begin our webinars in Australia with an acknowledgement of country. And I think that's particularly pertinent today in this webinar, that we do this not only for ourselves in Australia, but also reflecting on what's happened with the Karen people and the experiences of Zoya and Kwith. And I suppose too, in our own minds and hearts, to wish the same for them, that at some time in the future, they will be able to use this. So all people connected with people living in Thailand and Burma would acknowledge the same. And so I'd like to begin by acknowledging, in the case of Stefan and myself and anyone else in Perth, the Whadjuk Noongar people, the traditional custodians of the land on which we are gathered, to acknowledge our gratitude that we share this land today, our sorrow for the costs of that sharing, and our hope that we can move to a place of justice and partnership together. We also begin with prayer, and so I invite you to join with me in this prayer for justice. Grant us, Lord God, a vision of your world as your love would have it, a world where the weak are protected and none go hungry or poor, a world where the riches of creation are shared and everyone can enjoy them, a world where different races and cultures live in harmony and mutual respect, a world where peace is built with justice and justice is guided by love. Give us the inspiration and courage to build it through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. I now invite Stefan to introduce Zoya.
Thank you very much, Pat. Please excuse my voice, which has still got a little bit of a COVID cough in it. However, first I'd like to introduce Zoya Phan, who lives in the UK and works for the Burma Campaign UK there. She was originally born in Manaraplau in Karen State, Myanmar, Burma, and lived there until attacks by the military forced her to flee with her family. And she told that story in a book, which will give you the details later, until eventually her family arrived in Thailand. I met Zoya in 2003 at the first Young People for Development Training and Exchange program in Chiang Mai. Several years later, her father, a leader of the Karen National Union, was assassinated by the military. She now lives with her family, 3 children in the UK, and continues to raise awareness on Karen issues. I'll also, just to introduce the meeting, I'll also introduce Chris and Kwith. Chris is currently a member of the Special Advisory Council for Myanmar, and before that he was a commissioner on the UN fact-finding mission on Myanmar from 2017 to 2019. And long before that, longer than we wish to remember, I knew Chris as the Secretary of the Australian Catholic Commission for Justice and Peace, which was based in Sydney. Kwith, I've also known as the founder and coordinator of the Young People for Development Land in Karen Land, which is kind of the name for the area in which the Karen people live, spanning both Myanmar and Thailand. And he works near, just south of Mae Sot in Western Thailand. For nearly 19 years, he's been working with young people in that area, promoting the Young People for Development Network. Since 2020, he's set up a training program to train nurses' aides to assist people suffering from COVID in remote villages. And more recently, he's helped assist many of the displaced people who've fled the current violence of the Myanmar military. He will tell you more about that later. But right now, I'd like to offer the first opportunity to speak to Zoya. Thanks very much, Zoya.
Thank you very much, Stefan, and thank you to ACI and Young People Development Australia, and thank to you all for coming here today for this event. I know many of you have connections with the Karen or Burma in different ways, and I would like to say thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate it. I would like to show you some slides that I have prepared and show you some pictures. So if you don't mind, I will share my screen. As many of you know, last year the Burmese military was trying to to take control of the whole country, and at the moment the world media attention has already moved on, but more than ever people in Burma are so desperate and need help and support from the international community. The attempted coup has not succeeded, but people in Burma has also suffered so much. On the one hand, the resistance has grown stronger and stronger. On the other hand, the people in Burma need more and more international support. When you look at the map of Burma, you will see Burma is a very diverse and very divided country with different ethnic communities in different parts of Burma with neighboring countries. And the current people, we have current state in eastern part of Burma, but many of the current people are outside the current area, the current state, in Irrawaddy deltas, in Yangon, Bago, and Tenasserim in the north, in the south, and also in different part of the country. At the moment, because of the crisis across the whole country, over 800 people have been killed by the Burmese military, and over 13,000 people have been arrested. Over 9,900 people are political prisoners at the moment, and over 600,000 people are being displaced because of attacks by the Burmese militaries. This lady, she is a 100-year-old Karen lady, and I think her situation sums up what is happening in Karen area and what's happening in Burma. She is a grandma, and she's over 100 years old, and she has never seen peace in her life. She had to run since she was little during the Japanese occupation, and then had to repeatedly run to escape attacks by the Burmese military. So it is so important to understand that the current crisis in Burma was mainly because of the situation in the past many years ago, where we had different situations in different ethnic areas. The attacks and the crackdown on protesters in central part of Burma, and the killing of innocent civilians, the military trucks and the armored vehicles that you saw in central part of Burma, these kind of things never left the streets in ethnic area. The Karen people have been suffering for decades under Burmese military government, even under the civilian-led government, not just military dictatorships. So what is the root causes of the problem? I think it is very important to understand why we are in this situation and what are the root causes of the problem. For us, all governments in Burma, past and present, under democracy or dictatorship alike, they have refused to accept Burma as a country of many ethnicities and many religions. They want to impose their Burman Buddhist vision of Burma on everyone and all other ethnic nationalities. We have our own culture, we have our own traditions, and we would like to practice our own culture and tradition, live in our own life. So in the past years, some of you might have noticed that Burma has seen a growing religious intolerance in Burma with different military groups trying to impose their own policy on other religious and other ethnic minorities. And you might be aware of the crisis in Arakan state and the genocide against the Rohingya. Because of the lack of accountability and because of impunities, the Burmese military continue to attack ethnic minorities. After the Rohingya genocide, there wasn't any significant pressure against the Burmese military. So the impunity allows them to step up attacks against other ethnics like the Kachin, the Shan, the Karen. And last year, they were staging a coup. Some of you might remember some of the pictures from the military coup. People were very clear. They don't want to accept military coup. They used all the techniques they can get to protest against military coup. Peaceful protesting and trying to get all the support they get to resist this military coup. People from different ethnic backgrounds joined hands together against this military coup. This is from Karen state in eastern Burma, where civilians protested against military coup. Instead of listening to the people, the Burmese military responded with violence, and they cracked down on peaceful protesters. Many people were killed, many people were arrested, and many people were put in jails. And these are some of the Karen activists who have been arrested by the Burmese military. And the Burmese military continue to use repressive laws to suppress protesters, to arrest them, and then to keep them in jail and torturing them. Many people who were in detention, they faced sexual violence from the authorities. On the other hand, the civil disobedience movement also grows bigger and bigger, and as the resistance movement grows stronger and stronger. And the Burmese military soldiers are also, many of them are defecting to the resistance movement. And at the same time, people in different parts of Burma, they continue to resist military rules. They boycott military products, and then they try to cut the economic lifeline of the Burmese military. They try all the techniques they can to protest this military. And many protesters and many people who involved in the civil disobedience movement, they fled to ethnic areas. Many of them ended up in Karen state, Chin state, and Karenni, and Kachin, Shan, and other areas. And because the resistance continued to grow, and because the Karen and other ethnics provide shelter and sanctuary for those people who fled the crackdown inside Burma, those protesters, those political activists and politicians and people who involved in the civil disobedience movement. As a result, the Burmese military launched major military offensive in different ethnic areas. They commit serious human rights violations, including war crimes and crimes against humanity. And you will see many of the people who suffer and who are displaced are now in ethnic areas. This is a town in Chin State where the Burmese military burned down the village, to the town, to destroy it. And this is a scene in Cardijn state where more than 30 people have been burnt alive by the Burmese military soldiers, and that include 8 workers as well. And these are war crimes and crimes against humanity. And innocent civilians are being killed in attacks by the Burmese military. This one is in Cardijn state. And the Burmese military continue to use civilians as human shield and use people as forced labor and arrest them and torture them as they want. And the Burmese military attacks ethnic areas with aerial bombs, airstrikes on a daily basis. Since the coup, more than 1,000 Burmese military airstrikes happened in Cardijn, and other parts of Burma, in Chin area, Cardijn. And it caused major humanitarian crisis in the area. This is the result of the airstrikes. This is in Cardijn state in Mudro, where you will see a school was hit by the Burmese military airstrikes. In the past years, our Cardijn people worked so hard to rebuild our life, to rebuild our education, our school, our hospital, but the military just destroyed it within seconds. And these are victims of the airstrikes. Many of them are hiding in the jungle, inside a cave, or and they can't just stay in one place, because in daytime, the Burmese military use drones to look for where people are hiding. And then at nighttime, they send their fighter jets to bomb the civilians. So people have to move every 1 or 2 days. They can't just stay in one place. And the people who suffer the most are women and children and elderly people. And after this picture was taken after an attack in a Cardijn town in Duplaya, Eastern Burma, where many of the displaced civilians were trying to cross the border into Thailand to a safety place. But many of the displaced civilians are still trapped in the jungle, in hiding places, with very little food or no food and no medicine or clean water, and they desperately need help. When these refugees were trying to cross the border to Thailand, Thailand refused to accept more refugees, and they were forcing refugees back into conflict area in Cardijn state, and it is in breach of international law. I feel very sad to see the situation in Burma right now, because I am a refugee from Burma, and I know exactly how these people suffer. Because when I was 14, my village was attacked by the Burmese military airstrikes. We were first hiding in an underground bomb shelter. Each time the bombs dropped, the ground would shake, and we were just so terrified. And we had no choice, but we had to leave and fled for our lives. We walked through the jungles in a very dangerous area, and then we were very fortunate and lucky. We ended up in refugee camp in Thailand, where we got basic humanitarian support from NGOs there. And I know exactly how the people who are hiding in the jungle are feeling now, without clean water, without food, medicine. It is so hard for them. So as part of my work to campaign to promote human rights, democracy, for the Karen, for all the ethnics in Burma, and for everyone in the whole country in Burma, we work to raise awareness about what is happening in Burma in different ethnic area. We work to mobilize international pressure against the Burmese military and to force them into doing the right thing and to remove themselves from politics. And there are many ways the international community can do to help the people in Burma. At the moment, we feel like international community has done so little, and the pressure that they have put on Burma was so late and so weak, especially Australia. We would like to see more support from Australian government in terms of accountability, in terms of cutting arms, in terms of cutting funds going to the military, and in terms of providing aid to the people of Burma. We think that in terms of international support, these 5 steps can help bring down the Burmese military. People in Burma have been working so hard. They are so courageous, they are so brave they stand up against this military dictatorship. The Karen people and the other ethnic in Burma for so many decades have been standing up firm for our survivals, but we have very little support, political support from international governments. We need to see a global arms embargo that will stop all the arms going to Burma. We need to see Australia, US government, and UK, EU, Japan, and other ASEAN countries to come together and to also pressure other governments like Russia and China to stop their arms sales to the Burmese military. We need to see all the financial lines to the Burmese regime to be cut, especially on gas revenue and gems and timbers. We need to see sanctions on military companies in Burma. We have seen some sanctions from UK, EU, and other countries who impose sanctions on Burmese military companies, but not Australian government. Australian government took too long and too slow to respond to the crisis in Burma. And we need your help to push Australian government to be more stronger on the Burmese military in Burma. We need to see international communities to deny legitimacy of the Burmese military at the UN and in other countries. We need to see the end of impunity. This is very important. Impunity keeps allowing the Burmese military to commit serious human rights violations, including war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. How can any people, any governments, and any companies working with a genocidal government? It is unacceptable. And at the moment, the most urgent need for the displaced civilians are humanitarian aid. We need to see international community, including the Australian government, to increase significant amount of aid to the people in Burma, especially the internally displaced people and refugees on the border area, in Thailand, in Bangladesh, India, and other neighboring countries. We need to see governments, including Australian government, to put pressure on the Thai authorities to stop forcing refugees back into conflict zone and to allow humanitarian aid into Burma through cross-border assistance. We need to see governments to and donors to relax restriction on aid delivery. Many displaced civilians in Burma, they can be reached only through cross-border assistance. And the most important thing at the moment to stop Burmese military airstrikes in Burma is to sanction aviation fuel. I can't believe it, not a single country sanctioned aviation fuel going to the Burmese military. The airstrikes by the Burmese militaries in ethnic areas happen every day, and majority of the people displaced in current states and other ethnic area is because of airstrikes and the threat of airstrikes. It is so important that we sanctions aviation fuel going to the Burmese military. So what the people in Burma want, what do the ethnic people want, what do the current people want? What we want is our rights and protection for our ethnic identity. We want the protection for our culture and our traditions. We just want to be ourselves. We want peace, we want freedom. We want our next generation to grow up in peace, where they can go to school, they can go to hospital when they are safe, to be a human like any other people in the world. When I first arrived in the UK, I was so surprised with the level of individual freedom we have in this country, in the UK and in other Western countries. And to be a woman, to be an ethnic, and I can just be myself. And this is what I would like to see in Burma. And all the governments in Burma, whether military or whether civilian government, they practice Burmanization policy, where they impose their policy and their religion and ethnic identity on other ethnic groups. And we need this to be stopped. We want our own autonomy, where we can have our own development and rebuild our lives in peace and in freedom. And we need your help for that. We need Australian government to put more political pressure on the Burmese military to force them into reform and to force them into stopping their attacks against civilians in Burma. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Zoya. I checked a moment ago to see if there are any questions. I'll just check again. We don't have any questions. We do have in the chat room some sources that we can access later on. But I'm just wondering, are there any questions or any observations that people would like to make at this point, or to ask Zoya? Yes, Margaret, if you turn on your microphone.
Zoya,
Keep going, Tony.
yeah, Zoya, I'm a member of the media union. So I suppose my question is, what international media coverage is happening to awareness and support the cause? This is, of course, an issue we don't see in the Murdoch media, and it's hard to find in independent media sources that I access. So is there a reliable and strong media source we can use for updates?
At the beginning of the coup last year, there were lots of media attentions from different parts of the world. International media went there, and then they were doing lots of reporting. But the media attention has moved on, and most of the things happened in ethnic areas now. So there are not much international media attentions that reports on the desperate situation in ethnic area. But there are some Burmese media that are still reporting on the situation, but mainly in central part of Burma. In terms of resources from media organizations, I don't know exactly if there is any useful, but you can follow our campaign updates and the situation in Burma that we update on our website at the burmacampaign.org.uk. We have regular updates about the situation as well as update on our campaigns to get more international action. And you can sign up to our email list to get regular updates as well.
Thanks, Zoya. Any other questions? Yes, Margaret.
Zoya, how does Aung San Suu Kyi fit into this?
Aung San Suu Kyi remains in prison at the moment. And I think the new situation is so different from when she was in power. She might or might not know about what is happening now. But in terms of the support from the people in Burma, I think she still has lots of admiration and support from majority of the people in central part of Burma, in Burman ethnic group. But in terms of ethnic, other ethnic minorities and other religious minorities, I think many people were not very, were very disappointed with her approach during the genocide against the Rohingya, where she went to defend the military at the International Court of Justice and other international political forums. But I think if she still would like to make a difference, I think she could still make a big difference by supporting and standing together with other ethnic minorities in Burma.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Patricia.
Hi, thanks, Zoya. I haven't been very updated on all these issues, but I'm just wondering, is there a list of the military companies that need to be boycotted on your website, and also where the aviation fuel is coming from, in what countries?
We have two lists of companies. One is Burmese military companies and products in Burma that people boycott, that we have on our website. And the second list is international companies that involved in business with the Burmese military or involved in human rights violations and the destruction of environment. And this two lists of companies can be found on our website. And in terms of aviation fuel, there hasn't been any transparency in this industry. So we don't know exactly where these aviations are coming from, but we know for sure the Burmese military doesn't have industry to manufacture their own aviation fuel, and they have to buy it from other countries. So we are looking into this at the moment, and we have more information on this with question and answers on our website as well in the campaign section.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we probably need to move on. So Stefan, would you like to introduce Kwith Sidoti, please?
Well, Chris, I've known for a long time, since he was Secretary of the Catholic Commission for Justice and Peace in Sydney in the early 1980s. Chris is now a member of the Oh, geez, I've got to open up my page. Sorry about that. The Special Advisory Council for Myanmar. And before that, he was on the UN fact-finding mission on Myanmar. He was a commissioner from 2017 to 2019. But I'm sure Chris will explain much more about all that.
Thanks, Stefan, and good evening. I'm speaking tonight from the Gadigal land of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respects to the wonderful people who have given us the land that we live on and shared it with us and continue to care for it. I look through the screen here and I see my life flashing before my eyes. Not only Stefan and I, who have known each other for 40-something years, but others who go back further than Pat, like Pat, and then I go through the rest of you, Anne, Peter, Patricia, Wally, and so on. It's my whole life in front of me. So good evening to all those that I know, and hello to those that I am meeting for the first time. Zoya Phan's given a wonderful overview, and in my short comments, I just want to complement a couple of the points that she's made. And in doing so, it's a bit unstructured because I do want to take up some individual points in response to her introduction that was so good and so comprehensive. First, I just want to comment for a minute on the Cardijn. The Cardijn have been suffering especially heavily over the last 15 months. And that's really no accident. They have played an enormously significant role in Myanmar over the last 70 years at least since independence. One of the ethnic nationalities that have sought to be open to the others and to try to pull Myanmar together. And it's because they are so open and have been so committed to the democratic movement for so long that the Cardijn area was the natural area for those who were fleeing the military clampdown to seek refuge. And as they have repeatedly in the past, the Cardijn extended protection to members of the parliament who had been displaced and whom the military were hunting, leaders of the civil disobedience movement, ministers and deputy ministers from the National Unity Government that was formed after the coup began. They have themselves been defending the democracy movement and the leaders of the democracy movement over the last 15 months. And this is completely consistent with the stand that they have taken for decades. Amongst the various nationalities of Myanmar, the Cardijn were the most supportive of the Rohingya and the most vocal in speaking out at the time of the worst oppression of the Rohingya in 2017. So it's no accident that the Cardijn have been suffering so much in the last 15 months. No accident that the military has targeted Cardijn state particularly for the kinds of bombings by planes and drones that Zoya Phan has described and military offensives during that period. They really are one of the most heroic peoples in Myanmar and one of the most firmly committed for the longest period of time. Second, I want to respond to and complement the point that Zoya Phan made. Her comments, the attempted coup has not succeeded. This is at the heart of the continuing struggle in Myanmar today. Media attention has indeed moved on. It moves on as it always does, to later crises, to the crisis in Afghanistan last August, to the crisis in Ukraine now. That's the way the world's attention goes. But the situation in Myanmar has not got better, it's got worse in that time. And the military's oppressive actions have got worse, but the military's coup attempt has not succeeded. And it's that last point that is least known outside Myanmar. The military has not won. We are seeing first a more organised democratic movement than has ever been the case in the past. Mostly, if we look at 1988, for example, at the time of the uprising then, 2007 with the Saffron Revolution. The democratic movement was able to muster opposition for 3 or 4 months, perhaps at most. Here we are now, 15 months after the coup began, and the democratic movement has never been stronger. Part of the strength lies in the fact that, unlike any prior period in modern Myanmar history, there is a degree of unity amongst both the Burma ethnic majority and the various ethnic nationalities like we have not seen before. It's reflected in the formation of the National Unity Government and in the support given to the National Union Consultative Council by so many of the ethnic nationalities. Not all of them by any means, but by so many of them. And again, the Karen have been in the forefront. It's significant to me that the acting president is Kachin and the Prime Minister is Karen. The ethnic nationalities are playing major parts for the first time in leading the democratic movement and not simply supporting it. One of the questions about Aung San Suu Kyi that was asked of Zoya Phan was an important question. And Zoya Phan said in a very polite Myanmar Karen way that Suu Kyi had not always been successful in the past. Well, she'd been particularly unsuccessful in reaching out to the ethnic nationalities and providing respect and support for their human rights throughout most of the last decades. And it's great to see these nationalities now leading the democratic movement and so many of them strongly supporting it. So the second thing about the coup failure is that there has never been such unity within the democratic movement in Myanmar, and it's becoming stronger. The third is that the military cannot even claim to be exercising physical control over the country. It has been estimated that something like 45% of the territory of Myanmar is under control of the National Unity Government and the ethnic nationality organisations, and that perhaps another 30% is being strongly contested. The military is unable to exercise physical control over the majority of the country, and even in those parts of the country where it is physically dominant, not fully in control, but at least dominant, it's unable to deliver the ordinary services of government. It can't provide education, can't provide health and hospital care. It's not able to run a welfare system. The military really is thrashing around, asserting that it's the government of Myanmar, when in fact, it's the government of nothing. So the situation has developed over the last 15 months and continues to develop. And the democratic movement has never been more united. It has never been stronger. Collectively, it has never controlled more of the country. And it is firmly committed like we have never seen before. It's not going to defeat the military militarily, but it's holding its own. More importantly is its capacity to claim legitimacy and to win international support. And that last is the third point I want to make. Zoya Phan has referred to the limitations on international support. I'm afraid Myanmar is yet another example of the complete incapacity of the international system. The failure of the UN Security Council to do its job under the UN Charter is shown again in relation to Myanmar. There has been no resolution even put to the Council for a vote for many years, so far as Myanmar is concerned. Even countries that are strong on democracy, permanent members like the United States, the United Kingdom and France, have not even put up a resolution for a vote in the Security Council. The international system has failed. We have seen strong support from some countries and some groups of countries. The UK, the US, the EU, Canada have been more active since the start of the coup in responding to the coup and imposing economic sanctions. But Australia has been notable for the fact that it is different and acted differently. It seems often that Australia's commitment to human rights is strongest in relation to countries that are furthest away. We were very quick and responsive to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but we've done nothing about the situation in Myanmar. We follow the United States blindly into situations like Iraq and then decline to support US economic sanctions against Myanmar. There is a double standard, as so many times in the past, in the way in which the Australian government has approached these issues. We have not even imposed sanctions on the top leadership of the military. Some lower down military figures were sanctioned at the time of the Rohingya genocide in 2017, not the commander-in-chief, not his deputy, not the major army commanders. And we still haven't imposed sanctions on them since the coup began in February 2021. All Australia has done is mouth fine words and suspend a very, very small military to military cooperation program worth around 300,000 Australian dollars a year, next to nothing. And this in spite of the fact that the all-party Joint Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade of the Australian Parliament unanimously recommended the imposition of economic sanctions. The government is not even listening to its own members on the Parliamentary Committee from the Senate and the House of Representatives, let alone listening to the opinion of Myanmar people. I do hold out hope for stronger action. Today, the Australian government has announced that it will not replace the ambassador who has just completed her term, but will send a lesser official called a chargé d'affaires, therefore downgrading the level of representation of Australia within Myanmar itself. That's a good move. And there we are prepared to follow others. The UK has done the same, the US also. And we're also seeing a stronger commitment to economic embargoes on military companies. The Labor Party and the Greens have been committed to that for a long time. But the government is now saying that sanctions are on the table. And certainly the Liberal Party senator, who is chair of the Parliamentary Foreign Affairs Committee, has expressed his unequivocal support for economic sanctions and expressed the view that the next government, of whatever persuasion, will move towards imposing them. So there is some hope, but we have been weak, we have been inconsistent, dare I say it, we have been hypocritical. And the time has certainly come for more action, and I hope for that after the election on Saturday, no matter who wins it. The future of Myanmar is not dismal. It's not a failed state. It can't be written off. The determination of the people today is unparalleled in Myanmar history. But there is an obligation on the part of the international community, particularly a neighbouring state like Australia, to show much stronger support for the democratic movement than we have to date. So that very much is in our hands. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chris. We have some time now for any questions that people might like to direct to you or any observations that people might like to make. No questions? And I think given the time, it's now 5 to 6. Stefan, perhaps we should move on and hear from Kwith.
I just saw Margaret had raised her hand.
Oh, sorry. Okay, Margaret, yes.
I'm just commending Zoya and Chris on the clarity of their presentation. It was very well prepared, and I could follow it really well. So thank you, Chris and Zoya.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anne?
No, I was just responding to Margaret's comment and applauding it. I agree.
Thank you. Okay, it's over to you, Stefan.
Yes, well, now I'd like to introduce Kwith, who is the founder and coordinator of the Young People for Development Network in Karen land, which is that ethnic area where the Karen people live, both in Myanmar and in Thailand. He lives and works near Mae Sot, which is in the western part of Thailand. In fact, he lives right on the border, on the river. You could almost say on two sides of the border he lives and works. For 19 years he's been doing that. And in the last 2 years he's been doing some particular work, helping set up training nurses' aides for remote villages where people are suffering from COVID and lacking medical assistance. And more recently, of course, it's been the crisis of the displaced people. And again, well, this is what he's going to talk to you about, is some of the work he's been doing in bringing relief to some of those people. Kwith, over to you. Your microphone's still on mute.
Microphone.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, yes. Can you all hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to share my experience during the war in Burma. Start for December, my area at my village also was attacked by the military. So we all moved to the jungle. So at the moment, we cannot take anything there, and we need to run and stay in the riverside, under of the bamboo under the tree, and a lot of people, more than 10,000 people are together with us, and we at the beginning, as we cannot bring anything, so we try to get some support for the other side. It's me from Thailand. So many of the organization and some villager and also some community, they come to support us just cross the border to the we call the last ball of food box, and we stay for many days, more than 1 month like that. We just wait for the food that the people put for us, morning, lunch, and also evening food. More than 1 month, and then we try to get the rice that we can cook by ourselves. At this time, what for my side, like I work for young people for development around here. So the first thing that I see in this situation is the people we need help, especially emergency food, and also health, and also the shelter to stay. At the beginning, is the here December is like a summer, so no rainy, so we can stay anywhere under the tree. But start from April, we start to get rainy, so we all wet, and the house, the building that we make also broken. So most of the people have to stay and sleep under the bush, and we all will get and also the area is the fighting area, so we have to move all the time. Even we stay for a few nights, and we say it's not safe for us, so we have to move again and again. At that time, the most difficult is like the old people and small people, like the baby, and they are more difficult. And at that time, also the medical healthcare also we cannot do, and we cannot cover for all. As I told before, even we cannot bring anything, everybody live they are doing every day. So even food. So we cannot take any medicine. We cannot take anything. So we have to stay like that long. And when we start to get the medicine, it's also difficult because it's cross the border. So we cannot get from Thailand and we cannot get from Burma also because of the along the way we have the checkpoint and both sides. So some people there, many people know, I say most of them are afraid to stay in Burma, so they try to leave. They try to leave in and cross the border to Thailand. But anyway, it's not the legal way to cross the border. So for the authority issue, we have to come there. So we stay in Burma side for 2-3 nights, and then if very dangerous, we just cross and we just cross for 1 night and 2 nights, and we cross back, do it like that for almost 5 months, already 5 months, because we start to run 50th of December for this area. For now, the situation, many people stay in the jungle, in the bush, and many people also start to build the city, like a small city, like a bamboo house. So what we can do for YPD side, one is we collect the data. We collect the data and we share the data to anyone who would like to know the data. So we can some of the organization try to support some part like food, some medical, and also like a shelter, like we can do the house. So for the help also because of the border, so we cannot get help easily from any other country. And so most we have to go around inside Burma, and then we try to help each other. Now we do a training. We do a training such as young people for development. So we try to train them to how to talk, how to participate, how to encourage the community people who have to live on their home, and also we try to distribute the food because some of the organizations, some of the donations try to contact us, and as we are inside in the community, so we are the one who have to help another organization and another community who want to support the people here. And also health we cannot do the like a hospital. We cannot take care the sick and the sickness, the illness people. As you know, and the time is still in the corona situation. That's why we cannot do like a formal or proper hospital. But anyway, we try to go to each community that we can go, and then we try to help them for the health service also. And another one is the education part. The education part, and also we collect the children to teach them for their education, for their knowledge, because they don't have time to go to school already 2 years. So now when we are stay together, we try to do something that is like informal education. So I just want to share how we are running here, and also our security is not safe because every day we have to cross the checkpoint, and we have to answer many things as they ask. As I am the one who help the people who here, also I have to, how to say, take care myself more than other people. Just all that I would like to share now, and there is someone I want to ask about more the situation or the question. I can.
I have a question, if I may, quickly. Thank you very much for the presentation. The people that are going from one side of the border to the other, backwards and forwards, how do they get on for food?
Sorry. How for the food, right?
You mentioned the communities on the border.
Yeah, I lost the question at the moment. What is the question?
I ask about the communities moving from one side of the border to the other, backwards and forwards, okay? How do they get on for, you said there were groups of Karen people on the border. Sometimes in Thailand, they go for a couple of days to Myanmar and back again. What do they do for food? How do they get their food?
It's how to say, it's the main problem, no? Because we have to eat every day. That's why how can we get for the food? So and for the Thai side also, they start to send the food for the people from Burma, and also here in the Burma also they try to, how to say, they try to support the people like the refugee. So as I am a community people, so we can say we have how to say, community by community like that. For example, we cannot do big things, but anyway, like here, we try to get some food for in the shop. We try to get some food in the farm. We try to get the food for the company. We try to get food for Thai side. But so the food that we bring, we can get very little. So I mean, we cannot bring all food, but we have to bring small by small, and we have to share by and also they also help themselves. For example, they can try to find their food by themselves, like we buy ourselves like that, because some donor they agree to the community to buy their food for themselves. That's why we just bring some cash, and they just manage their food, their need. But if we carry a big truck, and maybe we cannot carry all the time, sometimes we can do, but sometimes we have to stop with another plan like that. And also the drone also from different, no, and they cannot cover all, but different donor cover different place and different area.
I know, I do that myself.
Are there any other questions for Kwith?
Oh, hello?
Hello.
You can
Rosalie.
hear me? Rosalie,
Yes.
yes. And I just like to say hello. I was in Maypa, outside Mae Sot, from 2013 until the start of COVID in 2020. I was at the ACU Study Centre in Maypa, where the students were doing the Diploma in Liberal Studies. Now, many of those students are now involved in different ways in trying to cope with the situation. Quite a few of them are in the Karen Human Rights Group. Are they able to get to you in any way to document or? find just to get some evidence, or how do they contact you there? Too much, too quick?
Maybe I can just say I can put you both in contact after this meeting. That'd be one practical thing that I can do for you both.
Oh, I think that sounds like a very good idea.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stefan. Thank you. Thanks, Rosaline. Any other questions or comments? Yes. Yes, Zoya.
Thank you very much, Pat. I just would like to compliment and continue on Kwith's comment about cross-border assistance and what Father Ron has just mentioned. Currently, there are over 150,000 people displaced in current state alone. Many of them are on the border area, and some crossed into Thailand. And we've got the recent information that the Thai authorities were pushing back some of the displaced people into the conflict area. And in terms of the delivery of aid, there are some community-based organizations who have been doing fantastic job delivering aid to conflict area. These people are so brave and so courageous. They risk their life just to deliver aid. And most of the money are from NGOs and the current communities around the world. And we have thousands of current communities residing in different countries, including Australia. And we have some collections among ourselves. We send the money back at home. And community-based organizations use this money to risk their life and deliver aid, and including medicine and food, and into conflict area. But they have very limited resources. They don't have much access to international aid donors because aid donors put on so many restrictions in place. And it is too big a burden for grassroots organizations to apply for big funding from aid agencies like the UN agencies or other government agencies. If they apply for funding, they'll have to fill in so many forms. They have to do lots of long reports, and they don't have capacity and resources to do this. So it is very important that these donors relax those restrictions on aid delivery, including cross-border assistance, so that this community-based organization have access to life-saving aid and help more people in conflict area. And it's also important for the Thai authorities to open up more access for aid delivery. And the Thai government is very close to the Burmese military regime, and they are so reluctant to put more pressure on the regime or to openly support the displaced civilians and the people on the border area. And in terms of the current human rights group, yes, we work very close with current human rights group in terms of documenting the human rights violations in the current area, and in terms of providing aid in displaced areas. This community organization, they are doing fantastic job. They just need more funding, and so that they can continue to do life-saving work for the displaced civilians. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zoya. Any further questions or comments?
Can I add to that, please?
Yes, thanks, Father Ron.
Yeah, Zoya, thank you very much. I too, you speak of getting the NGOs to relax their policies. I confess that I despair of that. In Australia, the level of requirement for compliance is, as you say, it's utterly beyond the small groups and the small camps and the small groups of IDP people. For myself, I've personally undertaken I have a small group of friends, and the funds, I would not give it even to the Marist NGO, because they too are under pressure from the government to account for every dollar that goes overseas, and you know, this IDP camp, which is ducking for cover from air raids every other week. You know, they don't have accountants and computers and that kind of stuff. So I actually do channel a small amount of funds to one of the camps at the Ichuta camp, but I was very interested and encouraged from Kwith's comment about, you know, that there's agencies in a small way, perhaps it's YPD, but you mentioned other agencies along the border. You know, is there any small agencies that we can send small amounts of money to, and the small amounts of money does make a difference. So I've given up on the big agencies. It's the Australian government's just too immovable on matters of compliance and that.
Yes, thank you, Father Ron, for your support for the Karen and other people in Burma. We do have Karen community-based organizations like Karen Peace Support Network, which we've been working with for so many years, and Karen Women's Organization, Karen Environmental and Social Action Network, and other Karen community groups like HRG, Karen Human Rights Group, and others. We work very closely together in coordinating this crisis and try to raise awareness, and in terms of getting international pressure, as well as coordinating in terms of the aid delivery. And Karen Peace Support Network is one of the biggest network that does this kind of aid delivery. They have very limited capacity and resources, but they are doing a fantastic job. Yeah, so if you can work with these community groups, that will be amazing.
Do you list those on your website?
Sorry, could I just interrupt for a second? Because I know that Chris has to leave. He's got another meeting starting in probably 10 minutes or so. So I just want to say thanks, Chris, for joining us tonight. And I know there's a lot to follow up on, and maybe in a further discussion we can pick up one or two points, but just wanted to say thanks very much for joining us, and hopefully we can follow up in the future. Microphone.
Sorry. Thanks, Stefan. Thanks, everyone. I'm sorry to leave you. I've got another Myanmar meeting in 10 minutes. They go non-stop. So thanks, and I'll be happy to follow up, Stefan, post-election when we know the shape of the new government.
Yes.
Right.
Meanwhile, we live in hope.
Yes.
Thanks a lot, Chris. See ya.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Okay. At this point, we've already gone over the time that we'd set for the webinar, but we did want to try and provide some time for people just to be involved in general discussion. You will have noticed that there was in each presentation a call to action, and action both at I suppose, a global level, right down to the sorts of actions that we can be involved in individually in small ways, but even in small ways, working collectively with people we know and who have feelings for people who are being oppressed, we can achieve great things. So shall we open it up for some general discussion now about possible actions and then bring it to a close?
Well, I'll just jump in quickly again, if you don't mind. I've put in the chat, we've talked about Young People for Development a few times. We have still a very small network here in Australia, and we do have a bank account, and we are trying to raise a little bit of money for Kwith's work. So if you'd like to take note of that, or if you know some networks where we can promote it, that would also be a small concrete action. And if you're working with Kwith, you know, there's no big kind of intermediaries between you and the money. So that's just one concrete small action I'd like to suggest.
Yeah, good idea.
What about the Maytao Clinic?
Maytao Clinic has been
Yes.
doing fantastic job
Yes.
over the past decades. my mother, before she died, she got treatment from mental clinic, and myself, I survived because of mental clinic. I went there twice because of malaria.
Yes.
Yeah, so we've been lobbying for more aid for mental clinic as well. Yeah, and after my father was assassinated in 2008, my family and I, we set up Phan Foundation as a family foundation to carry on our parents' work in terms of helping our people back home in Burma. And we focus on areas where in terms of the promotion of human rights, the protection of our culture, and then the helping people who are displaced in the country and promote education. And we also provide grants and support for community groups that we work with in terms of youth organizations and students organizations, human rights group, and environmental groups. And we rely on donations from public as well. So in the future, it would be great if you would like to make direct donations either to YPD or to Phan Foundation or to one of the organization we set up, Advanced Myanmar. Advanced Myanmar we set up a few years ago just to respond to the crisis in Burma, where we help provide humanitarian aid for displaced people and provide support for activists who are having to flee the Burmese military crackdown. And we focus on grassroots community including Burma, including different ethnic area in central Burma across the country. Yeah. And you can support our actions if you visit our website, Burma Campaign UK, .org.uk. You will see the different actions that we have there, and your actions will really help support our work. And you can also make donation to support our work. And the most important thing at the moment for us is humanitarian aid, as well as political pressure from the Australian government. If you can write to Australian government asking them to sanction aviation fuel against the Burmese military, to sanctions companies that linked to the Burmese militaries, to cut their economic lifelines, that will be really helpful.
Yeah.
Any further contributions? Yes, Tony.
Yeah. Just so that everyone knows, all those resources and information in the chat box, you can save them individually. If you go to the bottom of your chat box, you see 3 little dots. If you click there, it'll pop up a menu item called Save Chat, and that will save the chat automatically into a Zoom folder in your download. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. But there's some valuable resources that have been added to that chat box that people might like to use. I don't know if anyone else, I know Wally Deflis is in Brisbane, but if you are in Brisbane or coming to Brisbane next month, on June the 10th, we have a Luminous Lantern Parade, which is organised by Multicultural Australia. It's an annual Welcome to Queensland event, particularly focusing on welcoming new and emerging communities. I'm a photographer, I do social documentary work, and every year I've made a point of connecting with the Cardijn community, who are one of the smaller groups in this major event. So if you are in Brisbane and are around on June the 10th, please come to the Luminous Lantern Parade and find the Cardijn community. Again, as well as the international support, the support for our Cardijn communities locally is also an important element of this work.
I'll just mention also in terms of another action, I think his name is Mark Bowling from the Catholic leader in Brisbane. He wasn't able to make it tonight, but he's interested still to write a story. So we'll send him the link for the video from this, and if anybody would like to add anything for the article, well, we can provide him with further information as well. Yeah, I've also put in the chat. I don't like Amazon that much, but anyway, Zoya's book is for sale there. Maybe you can look for another website where you can buy it or download it. So, but anyway, for the moment, you'll find the details of it on Amazon, and try and look maybe on an Australian bookseller who sells it, if you're interested to read the whole story, which is a fantastic story, actually. Yeah.
Do we call it a close at this point, Stefan?
I think it sounds fair, doesn't it? Yeah.
It does.
So shall I just thank everybody?
Yeah.
Especially, well, we've thanked Chris, but also especially like to thank Zoya. And you've heard her story now and all about her work, and also Kwith, who, as you can see, is under the thatched roof there, right in the situation. And I'd like to thank everybody who's participated in this event and helped to make it happen, including Tony and Pat. So just thanks to everybody. And if anybody would like to keep cooperating on this issue, which I hope we do, well, you can at least contact by me, and I'll help you to get in contact with each other. And maybe later in the year, we could kind of, perhaps after the election, we might see the colour of the new government and see whether there's any new avenues for following up on some of the things that Zoya mentioned. So thanks again, everybody.